Okay, my name's David Hedrick. I'm with SAM, which is surveying and mapping. We do other things too. And I'm here with Casey Krause from City of Knoxville and Tracy Hayes from the City of Birmingham. Just to introduce myself, I'm with SAM. We do surveying and mapping, and I got into resilience because we have drones and 3D laser scanners and mobile LiDAR that can map large areas, and we help out with the, give the good as-built data for the planning. But nothing about me. Casey, will you introduce yourself and just kind of tell us? Actually, the first thing I'd like for you to tell us is you are an urban forester and a master arborist. Can you start out with what that is?
Yeah. So Casey Krause, I'm the urban forester for the City of Knoxville. I am a arborist by trade, which is essentially a tree doctor, I guess, if you would. Anybody, but show of hands, anybody here own a tree? Okay, yeah, all right. So we're the type of people you call when you have tree issues. My job with the City of Knoxville is essentially broken apart in a couple different ways. We do tree maintenance, we do tree implementation, so tree planting, and then also tree regulation, and set up a lot different in a lot of communities. We're a one-stop shop, so anytime you have a tree-related issue, it kind of funnels through to me, and then we kind of funnel out from there. To get back to your question, David, a board-certified master arborist is essentially because tree work is not a licensed industry in the state of Tennessee. Our industry has taken it upon itself to have our own credentialing, and that's through the International Society of Arboriculture. And so that is, I'm a board-certified master arborist through them. It's through a testing and years of experience process. And so essentially, there's a lot of different arborists out there, and the utility work all the way down to what I do with the municipality. So,
what are the resilience issues that you face?
Yeah, so the big thing right now, and you've heard it all day today, is talking about infrastructure. And oftentimes people don't see trees as infrastructure, and it's just something that looks nice, or it's complementing the landscape in some way, shape, or form. And so we at the City of Knoxville have really been at the forefront of trying to take this idea of trees as infrastructure and trying to put it into the community as an entity that does more than just looks nice. We look at the amenities that trees provide, and we heard about stormwater. That's one of the best things you can do is have trees and green space to abate some of the stormwater concerns you have. You're looking at it from air quality, looking at heat and the abatement of heat. One of the biggest things that we hear from our public is, how do we deal with the heat island effect in our community? And having green space and having trees is one of the best things that we can do to try and abate some of those issues. So I always tell folks, I plant trees, but really the big idea behind it is trying to get as much urban tree canopy as I can inside the community of Knoxville. And the more trees, the more amenities you're going to get, and you're going to get all of those things that kind of come along with it, with the stormwater and the heat abatement and stuff like that. And then on top of that, those are your environmental benefits. You've got the amenities like social and economic benefits as well. So trees in front of businesses and things like that to help attract business and stuff like that. So we are trying to deal with those sort of things. And I always tell folks, through what I do at the city and with climate and trying to be resilient is just in a very simple way is trying to get more trees and trying to increase the amount of tree cover in our community.
You mentioned the heat island effect. What exactly is that?
Yeah, so we heard about impervious surfaces and how it relates to stormwater, but it also has a direct correlation to the amount of heat in a geographic area. And we're not just talking, like from Atlanta to, some rural area. We're talking like just within the city of Knoxville, where you have the areas of your city that have more impervious surfaces that are going to have temperature changes, especially during certain times of the day, that may be 10 to 15 degrees different than other parts of the community. And a lot of people say, well, okay, what's the big deal, 10 to 15 degrees? Well, I guarantee you, if we all can agree, if we change the temperature in this room by 10 to 15 degrees, one way or the other, or somebody's not going to be comfortable, right? So it's a big difference, and it makes a huge impact for the people living in those communities. So really, that's really what heat island in a very general sense is the idea that the impervious areas in those geographic areas tend to increase the temperature, the daily temperature in those areas with high presence of essentially concrete.
Right, and we're talking about trees and landscape and that kind of thing that people view as temporary, but you don't view it as temporary, right?
No, so I'm more of a visionist where I kind of see things 30 to 40 years down the road. So oftentimes trees do become somewhat of a temporary issue or temporary infrastructure where you stick them in the ground and next thing you know, a parking lot or something like that's coming in or a project that you didn't know about. But really what it comes down to is our goal is to try and get large mature trees that are going to be there for 30 to 50 years down the road. And to kind of put this in perspective, like the challenges of doing that, the biggest thing and constraint we have is time, right? So I go plant a tree today, and to get the most bang from the buck from that tree is going to be 30 to 50 years from now is time, right? And I have to deal with all this silliness that kind of goes along with what's going to impact it. You got lawnmowers, you got UT beats Alabama in football, and next thing you know, everyone's going out celebrating, vandalizing trees, and things like that are happening. So you're just trying to get this tree to survive for 30 to 50 years. And to kind of put that in perspective, you talk about the new World Trade Center that was built. That took 8 years to take that from that point to the next. So 8 years. That's about the size of a tree when you go out to a nursery that you're buying. So that's what you get out of 8 years in urban forestry. So it takes a lot to try and get there, trying to get something to be there and get the amenities from it 30 to 50 years down the road.
Tracy, let's switch this over to you. Will you introduce yourself and let's talk about some resilience?
Okay, good afternoon. My name is Tracy Hayes, and I serve as the Deputy Director for the Department of Planning, Engineering, and Permits for the City of Birmingham. And what I oversee is the divisions I oversee are planning, zoning, which is your regulatory processes, and urban design, as well as watershed management, which is stormwater and your floodplain hazard mitigation services.
So what resilience issues do you see?
Well, speaking for the City of Birmingham, what we are seeing is a lot of flooding. So, like I said, oversee the hazard mitigation services portion. The City of Birmingham participates in the National Flood Insurance Program. And with that, we get certain benefits from that. Our citizens are allowed to apply for flood insurance. And then we are also a CRS community, and with that, our citizens get an additional discount to their flood insurance. So typically what happened in the past is that when these flooding events occurred, they were in those special areas, those special floodplain areas. So what our city is experiencing now is more an increase in flooding, but they are not in those areas. They're not in those special flood hazard areas. They're in the city that these citizens who've never experienced flooding in the past are experiencing flooding, and that's due to your infrastructure. What's unique about the divisions that I oversee is that I oversee planning and the stormwater in your watershed management, your floodplain. So for us, we start looking at planning practices. We started trying to address those resilience issues with our zoning ordinance. Over the years, we looked at landscaping, ordinances to address the heat island effects. We also looked at how, to reduce that. So more recently, we have introduced a right-size parking initiative. So what we looked at is that in your traditional zoning, parking is relevant to the use. So whereas you have a restaurant and it's 1,100 square feet, our previous zoning ordinance said that you needed one parking space per 100 square foot of gross floor area. That's a lot of parking. So our planners, we looked at that and tried to strategize to see what ways we can do with zoning practices, planning practices to mitigate that. And we successfully just passed the right size parking initiative. So it's not based on the use, but it's based on the right size. What's right size for that particular development? And we saw that helped mitigate the flooding in the area. So you have this urban sprawl, you have this urban growth, and our current infrastructure is not built for that. It was built for the development that was there at that time. And I'm sure, I know we heard this all day, but everyone's municipality, city, town is experiencing the same thing. Although you have the infrastructure and it's not necessarily it's aged, but it's not necessarily bad. It just doesn't have the capacity to deal with it. So we're just trying to go through policy to address the climate.
I thought it was very interesting what you said, that your standard flood designation areas aren't the only victims of the flooding, and that has to do with urban growth.
Yeah, it's about the development. So in the past, you would see when these extreme weather events happen, they were in the FEMA designated mapping areas. That's a special flood hazard area. What we have seen over the years is an increase in development. And as I previously stated, with our previous zoning ordinance regulations, we asked for an abundance of parking. So that hindered us as well. So not only you're talking about urban growth, you're talking about urban development, an increase of development. And you're talking about with the increase of development, if you have your traditional zoning that's requiring all of this parking, really not requiring any landscaping components to it, there's nothing to help mitigate or slow down, or even the water quality component that we just mentioned earlier.
Back to you, Casey. Let's talk about funding. How do you get the money to support what you want to do?
Yeah, so funding's always a challenge, especially when it comes to trees. But oftentimes when it comes to projects, one of the biggest things we try and do is get our goals established within all the other departments. So when there's a new streetscape or something like that the trees that are going to be funded and perpetuity of that is going to be funded within that capital project that might be coming through. Just more recently, we have come across a good partnership in that and it's similar to a lot of other communities, find that in working with local partners, in our case, Trees Knoxville has been a great resource in trying to leverage funds. So back in I think it was 2016, they were able to leverage enough funds to be able to do an urban canopy tree assessment, essentially looking at the overall tree cover. And then they did comparative data analysis from 2008 all the way to 2018, and were able to get down to like the neighborhood level and look at trends and things like that. That was something that essentially the city chipped in, but they were able to go out there and leverage funds from folks like our local utility, University of Tennessee, the state as well. So that's one way we've looked at that. And then also with grant dollars, that's one of the biggest things that help fund our urban forestry projects. We are always got the money as far as within our typical budget to take care of the maintenance related issues. You know, I also my department's responsible for storm cleanup, so that's always going to be there. You know, we can't have trees sitting across the road for a lot of time because the public aren't going to appreciate that. So, but grants are a big part of that, where essentially with the Inflation Reduction Act, we have tapped into that, and now we have 3 different grants within our community. One specifically looking at trying to abate stormwater through the University of Tennessee. One just essentially trying to extend the amount of resources to plant trees across the entire community, specifically looking at underserved communities. So thinking about our mission and trying to increase tree cover and try and make sure it's equitable. So that's through our partner with Trees Knoxville. That was, like a $1.7 million grant just to get trees in the ground. And then a third one was on the city's part was invasive species work, where we're looking at just the quality of trees in the green space that we have. So making sure that we're not just, when we're looking at urban tree canopy, that it's not just a bunch of kudzu or something like that. We have purposeful, meaningful trees that are going to be there for those years to come. So that's a huge part of it, is the partnerships and the trying to leverage that into grant dollars and trying to do things to try and expand your resources within the community.
So are you chronically frustrated and underfunded?
Yeah, aren't we all? Yeah. So I mean, I think we are at a point right now. I've had the privilege. This is my second administration with the city of Knoxville. So we have had 2 very good administrations that have been very positive about thinking about trees. The first administration built my position. The second one has really taken off to try and bring this image as tree as infrastructure into the forefront. So much that I get text messages at 10 o'clock at night from the mayor. I don't know too many urban foresters across the country that get that. So it's good. It's a forefront of what we're trying to do at the city. And I think that ultimately, I was always told, you got to strike when the fire's hot, and taking advantage of the situation and the funding and resources right now. So I think more than ever, our program's as funded as it's ever been, but always need for more resources.
Great. Tracy, let's slide back over to you. So talk about funding and how the money makes the world go around. What are the issues you see?
Well, earlier today, I know in one of the panel discussions, someone said it the best. When you're dealing with a municipality, there are so many other services that have to be allocated when you're running the municipality. So when you're allocating money for trash or for the first responders or those other things, at some point, the funding for at least the city of Birmingham, the stormwater fund, to fix our stormwater infrastructure is challenging. It is a lot of money to fix it. So the grant dollars is what we typically look at, and we try to strategize to see how do you do that. But the climate resilient part is that we're looking at, so let's say there's a road project or a sidewalk project. Instead of just focusing on fixing the road, we're just trying to take a one dig approach where we're looking to see, hey, let's increase that piping in that area. Let's look at the data that we already have regarding the hot spots, and let's kind of, conduct our strategies around that, have our projects be around that. So from a municipal standpoint, as funding that's how we're looking at that. From a grant funding perspective, we're also using that same data to look at how to apply. So previously with those flooding situations, we used the FEMA Flood Mitigation Assistance Grant, but there's some challenges with that grant. If you are not, if you don't have flood insurance, the local municipality can't apply for that grant for you. But with the implementation of your FEMA BRIC program, that assisted us with, circumventing that process. There's a lot of our residents who can't afford flood insurance. So then we had them at a disadvantage of us trying to accomplish or these grant projects to get that funding to at least help mitigate that flooding in their area. So with the BRIC program, it's helping us with those mitigation standpoints. If it's an acquisition program, but we're kind of staying away from acquisition, we're moving towards more of the flood control projects. So BRIC is really important to us, and I just want to go ahead and put a plug out there. Recently, the city of Birmingham has received direct technical assistance from FEMA BRIC program to help us strategize on how we mitigate flooding in our area.
So Casey, you mentioned a little bit about this earlier. You both have a large area under your purview. How do you inventory the area and decide where to apply your efforts and time?
Yeah, so a couple different ways. We've got a couple different databases that we use. We have our individual tree inventory that we use to essentially conduct maintenance, but also looking at where essential locations could be to plant trees down the road. So we always have a database of when a project might come through or grant dollars might come through that we're ready to go and know where to put them. But on top of that, we have done our canopy assessment, and we know those areas in the neighborhoods all the way down to a census block, essentially, where those areas that are lacking tree cover. We know what the median or the middle tree canopy, or what the average is across the city. We're currently sitting at about 38% tree cover. So we know those communities. We have some neighborhoods that have upwards to 60 to 70% tree cover, all the way down to like where our downtown area is maybe around 11 to 12%. So it's a great fluctuation in the amount of tree cover we have. So we have that all mapped out. And then on top of that, you start looking at some of the equitable aspects of it as well. And so you can look at things like income levels and things like that to be able to look at, trying to make sure and ensure that all areas of the city are getting essentially the amenities of what urban tree canopy does for an area. So we use things all the way down from census information as well to try and look at those things. Once you start putting these layers together and you look at areas, where high impervious surfaces are, and might have a neighborhood that low percentage of tree cover, and you start to figure out, those focal areas where you want to try and put your resources to try and abate some of the issues that, the climate and trying to be more resilient in those areas where we can.
Same question to you, Tracy. How do you do triage on an entire city?
Prayer. What we're doing is that initially our team went out and we looked at our inlets. So we did like a condition assessment. So like I previously stated, we're looking at different ways on how to improve the water flow, the water quantity and water quality in our municipality. For us, we realize that this is a serious problem, but without me as a planner in my planner mind, without a plan in place, it's going to be impossible to try to address. So what we're doing is we're collectively joining departments. So that's our capital projects department, our Department of Public Works, and the Department of Planning, Engineering, and Permits, because the stormwater infrastructure touches all of our departments. So we have met and we've discussed doing an RFP for a stormwater data assessment, a condition assessment. assessment, trying to let us know, like, what's the condition of our piping. And with that, we'll have a plan on how we strategize with the funding, with our municipal dollars, our funding on how we choose projects, as well as how we go after grant projects. So that is what we're looking at now.
Question for both of you. How do we raise awareness on this issue? Similar to the last presentation, the public doesn't know a lot of things they don't know. How do we get them involved and informed?
Yeah, so we just went, again, through our partner with Trees Knoxville, we conducted a comprehensive urban tree master plan. It's actually coined our Urban Forest Master Plan, and it was a year-long process where it was a lot of information gathering. We went out to the neighborhoods. I personally probably did 50 to 60 different neighborhood events where I was going out and just essentially asking the question, what are the things that you want to see from trees? What are some of the challenges you're having? And if you were to look at our community, 30 years from now, how do you envision that? And trees being part of that. And through that information, we got a lot of good details. And that was really, it set us in place to be able to start like mapping our way forward. Anywhere from hearing, heat was the number one thing we heard from everybody. Number two was, why plant a tree? Because I ain't got the income to be able to take care of it when the time comes. And so those are challenges and things that we're going to have to face moving forward, and making sure that when we're trying to educate folks and get them on board, that there's those type of barriers and things like that are taken care of, or we have ways to abate some of those concerns from some of those residents.
Tracy?
Hello. For the city of Birmingham, I would say we do a lot of community engagements. Like I said, one of our major issues is flooding, and flooding just not in our special flood hazard areas, but in the areas that are not located in one. Well, everything is located in a floodplain. But anyway, just with that, we go out and we explain. We go out and explain, like, you should get flood insurance, because the city does not have an abundance of dollars to, if your property floods, to fix it. So the common theme with our citizens is that, okay, a rain event happened, my house flooded, what's the city gonna do to fix it? We don't have money like that to fix it. And it's very difficult, especially when you see a citizen who spent all their money, their hard-earned years, living in a residence, and it's flooded, and they don't have the money to fix it. So because we participate in the National Flood Insurance Program, because we are a community rating system where we get those additional discounts to flood insurance, we encourage, we try to promote as much to our citizens, get flood insurance. Flood insurance is offered to everyone. You can at least, that will be a way to at least address whatever happened or flooding that happened to your personal property. The issue is, just to be completely transparent, flood insurance is expensive. So we have to look at our residents, and not all of them can afford that. So we try to get out and explain, about how grass clippings and don't put stuff down the drain. And we try to do all those additional education components to at least mitigate that. But our biggest thing that we push is the flood insurance to our community.
Awesome. Looks like we have 1 minute left, but thanks for sticking around to the top of the ninth inning for us. And we'll try to be available for questions just outside.